Okay, we are live. We are live. All right. Happy Tuesday.
Hello, hello. Happy
Happy
Tuesday.
Tuesday. I can't believe it snowed by you. That's crazy.
It did. Of course, my kids went outside. They're like, snow day. And I was like, no, there will be no snow day. It's not happening.
I have a friend that lives outside Austin, and it was a couple years ago. He sent me a picture. Actually, it might have been longer than that. There was like an inch of ice. It got like an ice storm.
Yeah.
The town was shut down for 3 days. And he sends me this. I say, I got no sympathy for you. Like, they'll close, like, that's not even a school day off. And I didn't think about this. I said, why 3 days? Because we don't have snow plows or
Yeah.
equipment. It was cold. It never melted. So no one could leave their house. And I said, well, that's the problem of living in Texas. You got to be a little more prepared.
No, it's the same problem here too.
Yeah.
I remember my son, he was less than a year old, and we had over a foot of snow, and
Oh, wow.
like we couldn't get around. We were out of power for 4 or 5 days, and same thing, like, there's only so many plows out there and so much salt that the government stores, and so we ran out that winter very quickly because we had a couple of different storms.
That's
You
crazy.
just make it work.
Well, we have a bunch of people joining us here. They're dying to hear you speak. I don't think anyone cares what I say. So let's kick this off.
All
Leila
right.
Shaver, thank you so much for joining me today. You are a securities attorney, founder of My RA Lawyer, one of the most recognized voices in the RA compliance and startup strategy space. You serve as outsourced CCO and general counsel to a firm managing billions and billions of dollars. And you have advised hundreds of RAs through the growth and regulatory changes that have happened. That's like the standard Leila intro. I'll give you my Leila intro is when I was going through my FINRA action, when I left my broken dealer, let's call it a broken dealer,
Ooh, I like.
she rode shotgun for 16 months. So I got to know her very well. And there were late night calls and screaming matches and frustrations and all this other stuff. But her and her team were fantastic. We've kept in touch ever since and thought it'd be great to get your perspective on this. I wouldn't say new trend, the trend to independence, which is the biggest growing segment in our great industry. And so great. Thank you so much, Leila. I know you're super busy. Thanks for carving out some time for little old me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And I think you can agree it's so much better on this side.
Every webinar, every podcast, every water cooler conversation I've had at this point, 5.5 years in, I've spoken to maybe 100 advisors in these constrained environments and people that have gone independent. And the common thread is, I wish I did it sooner.
Yeah.
I am 100% in that boat. I've not met someone who's extracted from those constrained environments and says, wow, I really missed those sales requirements. I really missed those compliance hurdles. I really missed it. And I've never met someone. I will admit it when I do, and you'll be the second to know, but I doubt I ever will. So yes, life is much better. In fact, I'm a better human being out of that constrained environment. So
Yeah.
this webinar is not a commercial for Cornerstone Planning Group. I want people walking away from this or hearing a clip, getting really good actionable advice. I have really a soft spot in my heart for the advisors that are stuck in that environment, the one firm giving them one narrative and making them feel really cozy because I was there for 17 years. So I can connect until I opened my eyes and said, wait, we don't need to be here and we can do this on the outside and we don't have these constraints. So I wish someone takes some of this information you're about to give us, some of these great insights, and gets them one step further to making a decision to better their lives and the lives of all their clients. So when we think about legal and speaking to the dozens and dozens of advisors, and first question I always get is like, all right, I know I can't stay here. I need to leave. What's the first thing? And it always pops up. Review your contract because every
Yeah.
advisor has a contract at their firm. So why don't you walk us through, and I'll kind of give you a couple points here to things that I've heard common themes about. What are the red flags? Let's do red flags, client
Yeah.
ownership, and then the difference between a non-compete and non-solicit, because I get that question a lot as well. So let's start with like common red flags you've seen from different firms.
Yeah. So you want to leave your firm. A lot of you guys didn't keep a copy of your agreement, and then you're deathly afraid to ask for it because, and sometimes legitimately so, you're worried that by asking, that'll put kind of a red flag up, right? That'll put a bullseye on you, because your supervision or your management or whoever you have to go to for a copy of that contract might think that you're considering to get out, which I think in and of itself is a red flag if that's the way they feel about you. So you want to make sure that, you're getting a copy of your contract. You want to make sure you're getting a copy of your compliance manual. You want to make sure you have a copy of your employee handbook. And if you have any difficulty getting access of those three things, those are all super huge red flags. That's probably an indicator that you need to get out faster and sooner rather than later. Because those are all things that you should have free access to, because they govern your position, the rules and requirements from an employment or contractor perspective, but also from a regulatory perspective. And so when we're talking about then the contract, first thing we're looking for is non-solicit, non-compete, and in rare cases, non-acceptance language. So non-solicit means you cannot go talk to employees, staff, vendors, right? So there's that kind of non-solicit, which is fine, right? You want to protect the relationships your business has made. Then there's a non-solicit in reference to clients, to prospects, right? And we really want to identify what belongs to the advisor. Does anything belong to the advisor? So we want to look at the non-solicit and identify, is it a non-solicit in relation to taking other employees with you, or does it also apply to clients and prospects? And then when we're looking at non-solicits, is there any carve out for any legacy book of business that you brought with you, or any kind of development you've done on your own? So we're looking at that. Non-compete is where you cannot compete with your firm. So normally a non-compete, there's a restriction on geographical area and time frame, right? So it might be you can't compete within a 50-mile radius for the next 2 years, right? That kind of non-compete would be upheld because it's specific enough. And that means you could not go work for anyone or start your own RA within a 50-mile radius of the office you worked at for 2 years. That's separate from a solicitation arrangement where you cannot solicit. That's just the competition piece. So those are two separate clauses. And then in rare instances, you have a non-accept, where even if you don't solicit a client or employee, you can't accept them as a client or employee.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Which is very restrictive, and you run across potential employment law issues with that. And other issues. So they're not very common, and a lot of states won't uphold non-accept. But as you know, Carm, that doesn't mean that they still won't engage in a legal battle with you.
That's right.
Right. So just because something won't necessarily be upheld doesn't mean you won't get a cease and desist letter, doesn't mean they won't file for a temporary restraining order or a TRO. It doesn't mean they won't initiate litigation or arbitration against you. So that risk is always going to be there, regardless of whether those clauses would be upheld in a court of law. The other thing we look at with contracts is the jurisdiction. So each jurisdiction looks at solicitation and competition a little differently. And depending on the jurisdiction, we want to look at, for some states, solicitation is as simple as letting people know you're leaving, putting an out of office as, hey, I'm gone, here's my new contact information. For other states, that doesn't rise to the level of solicitation. So that's also what we're looking at, is what is your jurisdiction that governs that contracts say about these clauses. So there's a lot that we can glean from your agreement. So that's usually your IAR agreement. If you're also like a supervisor or something like that, you may have another agreement that you're subject to as well. And we want to look at that as well to see if there are any additional restrictions on your ability to move and take clients and resources with you.
I've seen worst case scenarios. I lived through worst case scenarios, especially coming from the insurance broken dealer I came from. And I represent worst case, and it was much more than it was of a personal nature than it was of a legal nature. And There's one other advisor that extracted from the same company that had an issue, and that was a controllable. So if you look at, I know probably 30, 40, maybe even more people that have left this insurance BD, and I only know of two litigious times, and that was me and this other buddy of mine. Both were real outliers. So, when advisors do extract, in what I've heard and what I've seen, it's not common that they're going to, come after, unless you're a $200 billion team extracting. That's,
Yeah.
maybe they're going to throw some money and some time at it. But there's been several court cases with opinions, and it's making it harder for the firms to come after advisors that are leaving. That's what I've
Yes.
seen in the last 20 years. It's harder for the firms to hold a lot of these constraints that they have in the contracts. Have you seen the same thing kind of shifting?
Yeah, I mean, I think most notable, we've seen this with Edward Jones. So Edward Jones' model is, these clients belong to Edward Jones. So historically, when advisors left Edward Jones, it was like, you're not taking any clients with you. Edward Jones is super litigious. And then in the last few years, there's been a few cases where, the advisor is able to show, no, when you onboarded me, you asked me to bring my clients with me. You asked me to
Mm,
solicit my clients away. And now you're saying I can't do that when I now want to leave your firm. So there has been some pushback from the legal system in terms of these issues. But I think also you bring up, kind of the insurance broker dealer concept. So you've got these old school companies that worked in the FINRA broker dealer side or insurance. And then all of a sudden they launch these advisory arms, affiliates, groups, whatever you want to call it. But they're bringing this kind of toxic FINRA culture into that space that's supposed to be much more entrepreneurial. It's much more gray in terms of regulation. And it's not working, right? Because there's so many firms out there that let you bring your own book of business, let you develop your own book of business. They're losing out on that competition, and they're losing
mhm,
advisors as a result. So we're even seeing like Edward Jones starting to change their structure and looking at incentivizing advisors differently. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that these things happen, but a lot of times too, that's why I always semi joke, when clients come and they're like, hey, this was a gentleman's agreement. And I was like, great, but a lady's agreement is in writing, right?
mhm.
So,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. I know, Carm, you can speak to this. It doesn't matter if it's someone that's been your best friend, someone you've worked with for decades, you know, it can go negative. And we've seen relationships ruined because of people leaving firms. So it's so important that if you're negotiating a contract, and you should be negotiating your contract in advance, you get
Mm.
everything in writing in the contract. Don't give me an email. Well, they said the email is not a contract. You put it in the contract.
That is such a great point. In my situation, and in the other gentleman's situation that also caught some legal issue from the same insurance company, the managing partner we were best friends. We were 15 years old.
Yeah.
So you would think there'll be some, and there wasn't, zero. The other person was very, very close friends with the managing partner and thought enough to give him a courtesy. I did the same thing, which was a gigantic mistake of, hey, I'm leaving. I want to give you the heads up. I don't want to drop this on your desk Monday morning when I resign, which, by the way, talk about being a gentleman. Their protocol is much different. In fact, relationships turned in 30 seconds.
Yep.
And it went from a great relationship to pure venom, as you saw. And so here's a tip. I don't care who you work for. I don't care what firm you're at. You tell no one. If your father's the CEO of that firm, you don't tell him until you actually leave.
Yeah.
Because what happened to that friend of mine is they shut his access down immediately. And he was not ready. And it put him in a very bad situation, thinking that this person is a good friend for many years would say, I get it. I understand. Conflict of interest. Roger that. No, it was, all right. Thank you for telling me you're now shut down. Good luck. And
Yep.
that's it.
Yep.
Interesting point. Very interesting point. And so here, any takeaway, don't tell anyone. Um, so now this advisor's got their contract reviewed. They know their guardrails. They know what data is theirs. They know the client ownership breakdown. They know, because we went into my extraction as what's worst case scenario, which I think everybody should look at. And I looked at it, I go, okay, that's worst case scenario. They come after me for this and this, and it's made, this is what it'll cost me. And this is the time. I was fine with it. So I was not surprised. In fact, I was mentally prepared for it. Again, me being the minority of advisors who leave that have any action, be prepared. Because if you're mentally prepared for that being worst case scenario and that doesn't put you and your family out in the street, then you'll probably sleep easy, like I did.
Yeah.
So, got your contract reviewed, you got your path. Now you have a choice. You can either bolt onto a firm, the most common, you're going to go out and shop in an RIA or a BDRA, whatever your business model is. You're going to interview, you're going to ask questions, you're going to do some fly-ins to different firms, culture, technology, capabilities. That's option one. Option two is open up your own RIA. Both have pros and cons. Opening up your own, I would say, knowing many people who've done it, it's not for the weak. I could tell you that. It's a lot of work. So why don't we start with, we can encapsulate the tuck-in model pretty easily. Let's talk about, like, okay, you decide to open up your own. Why don't you give us kind of that step-by-step, because you helped me build Cornerstone. So take us through that process of building it out, the initial build out.
Yeah. So let's assume you're taking AUM with you. Okay. So you need to look at, are you registering at the state level or with the SEC? And generally, if you have 100 million or more in assets under management, you're going to go straight into SEC. There's some exemptions if you have less than that AUM. So like if you're a New York based advisor, they don't they don't supervise RAs with more than 25 million in AUM. So you would go SEC that way. Also, if you would have to be registered in 15 or more jurisdictions, you can also go SEC registration. So we look at that. Caveat, if you're going to go state registered, it's going to take longer than SEC registration. Just generally speaking, states, it's just a longer process. I love the SEC registration process. It's super easy. Either way, everything is done online through IRD. You have to submit your ADV Part 1, which is the fill in the blank, fill in the bubble questionnaire. You've got your ADV 2A, which is the narrative brochure. So you want to be clear on what your services are, your fees, your investment strategy, risk, conflicts, etc. You have your ADV 2B, which is basically your background as the advisor. And then if you're SEC registered, you have that lovely, useless 2-page document called CRS. So all of that gets submitted through IRD, and that initiates the registration process. And at the state level, there might be some back and forth, and there might be some additional state requirements. They may require like a balance sheet. They may require some sort of bond or documentation of a bank account with a minimum amount of money in it if there's a net capital requirement. Florida, for example, there's some forms you complete attesting to the fact that you haven't served any clients in their state on an unregistered basis before and things like that. So there may be some additional state requirements as well. So registration process is generally pretty simple. From the day you file with the SEC has 45 days to approve your registration. I think with states, you know, it varies, right? Like Texas, Florida, California tend to take longer. Love the great state of Georgia. They get it done fast. So I'd like to say from the time that you submit your documentation, you're looking anywhere from 2 to 3 months to even 6 months on the state registration side. And then state registration, if you have to register in multiple jurisdictions, that might take extra time. So just keeping that in mind when you're kind of planning ahead and trying to be strategic about your timing in terms of notification versus starting the registration process.
You know, that's, and I get that question a lot when we're talking to advisors, and it's really hard to identify who. So here's the thing. If you're going to open up your own RA, you're now running an enterprise. And I say conservatively, 30% of your time you're going to take of your working time is to maintain the enterprise, because past, you know, law firm or someone like Leila helping you with registration, we have 31 pieces of technology all integrated talking to each other, but someone had to go out and pick those 31. Someone had to go out and maintain all 31 relationships and keep track of their security protocols, because the SEC makes you do that. So building the firm is one thing, maintaining it's a job. It's about 30%. I'd say, again, conservatively, depending on size.
Yeah.
If you're an advisor that says, so I'm gonna quote my business coach, Joe Lucas, here, because he really encapsulated this. Advisors have three identities, right? They're advisors to their clients, business owners. This is the renting, the workers' comp, hiring, benefits, things like that. And then there's the entrepreneur mindset. Where's the industry going and how do we pivot? So most advisors, and you'll probably agree, are great advisors to their clients. They're not the greatest business people and not the greatest entrepreneurs. So if you're not firing in all three identities, you're probably best off tucking in, because chances are the CEO of that firm is firing on all three identities.
Yeah.
Or just a business owner and entrepreneurial identity, which you need to be running the backbone of the firm that you're bolted onto. I see it a lot. And most people are like, look, I just want to see clients. Great. Don't complicate it all by opening your own firm. Tuck under. Most firms like Cornerstone, we allow you, if you want a DBA and have your own identity, fantastic. You know, about half of our teams have DBAs, which is great. If that's what you want, fantastic. We'll support you. It just, I always see, and also the other part is if you're under 100 million, depending on the state, let's talk about audit timing, right? So there's some states that audit you very frequently. We had an audit in 21, so a year after we opened. Yeah, about a year after. And we haven't heard from the SEC since. And it, you know, they may say, hey, look, we may see you in 10 years. We don't know. Okay, great.
Yeah.
See ya. Let's talk about the difference between the annual compliance items from a state registration standpoint to an SEC covered entity.
Sure. Sure. So, SEC, I prefer SEC because they're just much more consistent to work with. So you're going to have your initial registrant exam, right? Which generally historically has happened within the first 12 to 24 months of registration. That's them identifying on this risk spectrum. Where do you fall? Are you a high risk firm? Are you a low risk firm? Are you in the middle? And that sets the exam cadence moving forward. So it could be every 3 years, could be a decade, right? Before they come out again. But that initial exam kind of sets your risk profile with the SEC. And then they keep to it, right? And it's very consistent. You know, we review constantly the requests from the SEC for across all of our clients. And, you know, they don't change a lot. They tend to ask for the same things. Their focus may shift from exam to exam, right? Where it's like, oh, this exam, they're focused on your financials, or this exam, they might be a little bit more focused on your books and records. But generally, they're pretty consistent. At the state level, it differs, right? So there's some states like California and Texas. They do a lot of vetting initially through your registration process, which is why those states may take longer, because they're asking for a lot of information. They're tearing through your documents. But there may be longer time periods between examinations as a result, because there's so many, like you think California, how many advisors are in California, right?
Yeah.
There are other states that are a lot easier to register in and it's faster, but they're conducting more routine exams on a more regular basis. And I went through with a client a Virginia exam. 2 guys showed up. They had their little manuals of questions. They literally went through and asked their questions and wrote the answers. And that was it. It was that simple. There are other states like North Carolina, which I'm from North Carolina, but they're a little bit of a pain in the ass. State of Washington, I will freely say there are a bunch of crazy people in the securities office over there. They can be more difficult. And then the other challenge is states don't tend to be consistent. So I bring up state of Washington because there was an issue that came up and we're like, well, look at all these other enforcement actions. They're like, oh, that's not precedence. You can't rely on these other enforcement actions and findings there to say that we should be treating this action this way.
Wow, that's
yes,
weird.
That is weird. It is crazy, right? And the states, that's just one of the funky things about state registration. And then if you're registered in multiple states, God bless you, because then you have
Hmm.
to, all of those states have the right to exam your firm.
Okay, so wait. So if when I open up Cornerstone, if I was under the 100 million, I register in New Jersey. I have 5 or more clients in Texas, in Florida, in California, Michigan, Connecticut, Pennsylvania. So I have, say, I don't know, 10, say I'm an advisor, I have 10 different states I have 5 or more clients in, which is common now because Zoom. Every one of those states now have the right to do an audit because I notice filed in those, or I filed in those states because I have 5 or more clients.
Yep. They have
Wow. That,
jurisdiction over you because in terms of their residents, so they can come and conduct an exam of your
oh,
firm.
wow. That I did not know. See, you learn something new every time you talk to Leila. This is fantastic. Um, So that could be another deterrent from someone under 100 million saying, maybe I don't go through the state SECs easier,
Yeah.
or tuck in when you're under 100 million, reassess after you break 100 million. Because in the process, may be a lot easier for you to then at that point leave the firm that you started with and go and become an SEC covered RA, which, and I can attest it is, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it's, um, the audit was very practical. Like I'll give you this as an example. I have a friend who's got a state covered RA in New Jersey, and his audit was, and they audit him almost not every year, but it's a common occurrence.
Yeah.
And when we were talking, kind of comparing notes, I said I walked away from my audit. I learned a lot, and we actually changed things that they didn't even ask us to change because they just brought, hey, you may want to just think about this. They were very,
Yeah.
it was a CPA and 2 attorneys that we had the calls with. I learned a lot and I thanked them. I did say on my last call, I said, look, please don't take this the wrong way, but I hope I never speak to any of you ever again. But it was so great to go through this process because I learned so much. He goes, learned. He said, I learned nothing. I learned, I have a new hatred for the state of New Jersey for what they put him through. So the temperature was different. Like the SEC was almost guiding,
Yeah.
where he knew that they were just trying to find something and they weren't going to leave until they found. So he got a small fine. It was a very minor infraction.
Yeah.
But the temperature was much different, which I can, you've helped advisors on both sides. You've assisted tuck-ins and you've helped. What's the common characteristic you've seen from an advisor who goes out, opens their own RA and kills it versus the ones that may do it and then they're just kind of just there and they're just kind of maybe quasi growing, not scaling, just being present. Is there a common characteristic that you've seen that differentiates those two?
I mean, I think certainly from a personal characteristics perspective, the ones who are the most successful are hungry and they have drive. Like there's so much they want to get done. I think the ones that tend to be more successful and grow more quickly are also ones who actually have a plan, right? So we have
Mhm.
some clients, well, I'm leaving. Can we just copy the ADV of the firm that I'm leaving? Because that's basically
Oh,
what I want to do. Oh, I just want to start basic and I'll figure it out as I go. Those are the firms that struggle because they really haven't put together a plan. They don't have a goal in place. They don't have a strategy in place. They haven't thought about how they're differentiating themselves. They're not thinking about how they're marketing themselves to their clients. The firms that are very successful and grow very quickly, they have a game plan, and that could be a game plan for recruiting, for moving over clients, for the tech they want to bring on. Like they have put in the time and energy to really map up. I'm going to get my clients over in this amount of time, and then I'm going to grow by this AUM year over year. And I want to be at this AUM by year 5. And that means I'm going to go and get a marketing person. I'm going to go get compliance outsourced. And they're looking at outsourcing, right? They're looking at what are the things I can fire myself from that I don't like to do anyway, and what are the things that I'm like zone of genius in, right? And to your point, right? And shout out to Coach Joe too. Those are the ones that have the entrepreneurial spirit.
mm,
They've got that business mind, right? They're focusing on what's the highest and best use of their time. The ones that
insourcing. Yeah.
Yeah, the ones that struggle a little bit more are the ones that just don't really have a strategy in place.
I can't show you because if I turn my monitor, something happens, it shuts off. But our vision, our next 3-year visions on one of my whiteboards here in my office, and that's for every team member to see. So I've been very focused on having a plan. And if we break it down, the people that are more intentional about why they're extracting, why they're building a firm, and thinking 5 steps ahead, and that's a common thread that I've seen:
Yeah.
intentionality. Just leaving the firm because they're limited in my abilities and just copy and paste the ADV and I'll figure it out in a year or so. And the one thing I will tell you, and I've been coaching advisors for 23 years. You show me an advisor with scarcity mentality, I'll show you an advisor that will not grow.
Ooh.
Very, very minimal growth.
Yeah.
Where you look at someone, so I'm a byproduct of personal development. I worked at the phone company out of high school, never went to college, and got into this industry. So I don't have my daddy's book of business or anything. And I knew I needed help. And to this day, I have 3 business coaches. And I immerse myself and I'm a voracious reader. And it's, mostly about being a better human, I call it. And one of the onboarding questions we ask it when an advisor reaches out to talk about joining Cornerstone is, hey, tell me about your personal development.
Yeah.
What podcasts you listen to? What books have you read? What conferences do you go to? Tell me about your staff. Tell me about, are you insourcing or outsourcing? Because that's a great point. An advisor that says, hey, look, I want to run my own money. I'm going to be my own chief compliance officer. I'm going to be the chief cook and bottle washer. Flag is up for me. I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes,
Yeah.
pal. Let's see.
Yeah.
Are you an advisor or you want to be a business owner? Because you just gave yourself a job. Could be a very well-paying job for sure. But if you don't see hiring staff as an investment, not a cost, if you don't see hiring a coach as an investment, let me give an example. Who Not How, great book by Dr. Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan. Any problem, concern, issue, goal that an entrepreneur may have, it's either it's a who, not how problem where do I need to figure out how to do it? Or
Yeah.
do I need a who can do it? 99% of the time, it's a who. As you know, I'm a runner. So I said, I just want to make sure I'm running efficiently. I found a running coach. Did a 1-hour session with him. It changed my running forever.
Yeah.
Because this guy's run, I don't know how many, 8,000 triathlons. The guy's, he's fantastic. 1-hour session with him at a track. He videoed me, gave me 3 tips, and it changed. And I'd say that tied into health and wellness for me, but $100 investment, not a cost. That investment will change the way I run forever. It already has.
Yeah.
Looking at things as investments, and when advisors look, I don't want to hire that, it's going to cost this. I go, no cost. It's no cost. So when someone, I guess, gets to the point where they understand that the currency in life is time, not money, that's when great things happen. And I think that's a real differentiating factor between people that scale and people that just grow.
Yeah.
I'll get off my soapbox. Okay.
No, I think coaching, I've done coaching. I've done coaching with multiple different providers as well. Actually, one of my business coaches, she's now the managing director of my firm. And you're absolutely right. It's one of those things, you are limited. Your the biggest thing holding you back is you, right? Because you
For
have
sure.
blinders on, you have certain limiting beliefs. If you are someone that has a lack mentality, you can shift that mentality, right? You can shift your mindset, but you need someone who can see the things you can't see to help you start, visualizing and kind of taking those blinders off and helping you see what you're not seeing. And I think that's so important. In my opinion, the professional and business growth you have is very much tied to the personal growth and development you do. And they're connected. So if you want more business growth, you need to work on your personal growth as well.
So let me frame that for you real quick. If you have a business goal of growing, say you want to double your business in 3 years, triple your business or 10x it, whatever that number is, like a pretty good, a very audacious goal, very hard goal to reach. My first question is, who do you need to become to pull that off?
Mm-hmm.
Who do you need to become? And my my physical regimen per day is about 3.5 hours. So I spend that based on everything I do to encapsulate as being a better human. And I can tell you, when I started taking that seriously years ago, the firm grew exponentially in lockstep with my discipline with personal wellness. I don't know why. it correlated, but I believe it's because, having a level of discipline personally for personal health is easier. I'm sorry, much harder than dealing with discipline around business goals and things like that. And it ties back to being a better human and who do you need to become to
Right.
pull this off. And again, that's from Coach Joe. He reframed that for me years ago. And I said, well, I thought it was you need to build. No, no, no. You need to change yourself first. So here, if you want to grow your practice, 5X in the next 3 years, can you do that in the state you are today? One of my whiteboards says your current self cannot solve your future self problems. It's on one of my whiteboards. It's so true.
Yeah.
So your goal should be, I need to become my future self as fast as possible to not have future self problems, not current self problems. So
Right.
yeah. Okay. I'm off the soapbox. Sorry. Because I could go all day on this. And I think people have heard me talk about this enough. The third point we wanted to touch on today is now that you're independent, you got your contract reviewed, you extracted, you chose to either tuck in or build your own RIA. Now you're in independent land. Now coming from a wirehouse, bank channel, insurance BD, the world is yours.
Mm-hmm.
The great thing about starting a firm is I'll say to get I got to pick 31 pieces of technology. We picked the best of the best. The bad thing about starting your own firm is you have to pick 31 pieces of technology. And it is so easy to get down a rabbit hole
Yeah.
of look at these 17 things I didn't know I can do now. And I want to talk to this person about property exchanges. I want to talk to this person about opportunity zones. And you framed it up on our last conversation about avoiding shiny object syndrome in the independent space. So let's talk about tech and compliance stuff. What are the things you need to be hashing out before you pull that ripcord around tech and compliance, the
Right.
major piece of tech compliance?
So, I mean, I think the first step is a practical one. What's your budget? Right. I think depending on how much AUM you're starting with, the size of your firm, the number of staff, you need to be practical about what you can spend on technology. And for some people, that means initially, at least, they are running off of spreadsheets. But I think there's also something to say, what is the best investment you can make when your budget is limited? Right? Do you really need to be paying the marketing company that's promising 100 leads when the vast majority of them are going to be unqualified and crap anyway? Is that where you want to spend your money, or do you want to spend it on a really good CRM where you can capture your notes, where you can capture documents about your clients, where you can create workflows and systems operationally? I'm going to argue that's a better investment of your money setting up a CRM than it would be to go and set up a lead generation company. And I think that's where this shiny object syndrome comes in, because it's far more fun to talk to lead gen company and have them court you and tell you all the wonderful things they can do and how fast they can help you grow your business than spending the time in a CRM and building your workflows and the tags and the fields and integrating the SharePoint or the Dropbox or whatever. But I think that's part of identifying what is the technology that's going to have the biggest impact on us. And then as you grow, or if you're starting with a bit bigger of a budget, looking at what are the core pieces that you can really use to be more efficient and automate, right? So, CRM, maybe it's a financial planning tool, with compliance or any other tool, how do they all feed together? Right?
Yes.
Looking at if you have multi-custodial relationships, does it make sense to have something like an Orion that can aggregate all of those custodial feeds into one place? Versus are you only using one custodian like a Schwab and you don't necessarily need to spend that kind of thing? I think also companies go through phases where they're growing, and so they add a lot of technology and they bloat, and then they go through a period of time where it's we have too much effing technology and we have multiple technology that overlaps, and then you kind of thin it out and really look at what integrates the best with each other and what's going to be the most efficient. But don't be distracted by the newest AI note taker tool. Don't be distracted by the newest e-signature tool. Don't be distracted by the fact that you can turn on an AI component on this, because besides cybersecurity and vendor due diligence issues, it may not be everything you thought it was going to be, right? And it could just be another tech that you forgot you're paying for that nobody's using.
Yeah, and I say, well, Dan Sullivan says, to his credit, simplify before you multiply. And using a CRM with workflows and integrations, we use Zapier. We have 100 different
Yeah.
Zaps set up where it's automating everything for our service team to where a client schedules an appointment using Calendly, a digital calendaring system, and it starts the workflow and wealth box for the service team automatically. And like it takes years to build that out and test it and improve it. And um, that's time. Time is energy. Attention is energy.
Mhm.
If you're building a firm, is this a who not how problem? I know I need to figure out who can figure this out for me
Yeah.
because I need to take care of my current clients and I need to be doing some business development and bringing in new business. Uh, your time is much better served as a lead advisor or hunter, as I call it, because there's hunters and farmers. Finding new opportunities and developing business, not figuring out which Zap is going to be the most efficient. This is where bolting on may be a huge benefit because again, time being the currency. You go to the
Yeah.
right firm, those workflows are built out. Those Zapiers
Yeah.
are already set up. They have a tech person. Like we have a tech person that checks it with each advisor quarterly. Hey, what are you using? What aren't you using? Hey, did you know I could build out a Zap that if someone leaves a Ring Central message, I can have them send you a Teams message. So there's a voicemail or whatever. No, I didn't know that. Great. I'm going to set up for you. No problem. Like firms have those people. We have a
Yep.
Tom. Hey, Tom. So Tom does all that stuff. He's a little wizard. I don't know what
Yeah.
really does back there, but it all works and it works great. And, but being distracted is now because all these vendors have your information because they're
Yep.
scraping ADV data. We get calls. We've had wholesalers stop in our office because we don't, you know, when they email me, we don't respond. And they've stopped in. They actually, to his credit, I wish I remember the name of the company because I would definitely give him a shout out. He made me feel really bad because I didn't take his meeting. He dropped off, Layla, the best brownies I've ever had last year in a tin.
Ooh.
His wife made him too. He's like, I'm dropping these off. I know Carmine's busy, but me and my team, we hammer them. And I said, I think I have to talk to him because I feel so guilty. Yeah, they're so good. I'm actually hungry thinking about them. And so you're going to be bombarded. They're going to want to sell you the $100 a month AI note taker. They're going to want to send you $250 a month newsletter that we can, private label for you and send out to all your clients.
Yes.
There's just hundreds and hundreds of vendors waiting for people like you to register, and then they're going to bombard you. And it's so easy to get distracted. Remember, you're an advisor, like figure out your identity, stay in that lane, and do not get distracted. Shiny object syndrome is a real thing,
Yes.
and it is detrimental to your growth. I've actually used that on several conversations with advisors, Layla, when you had told me that. I think it was great way to frame it. Let's end on a couple notes here. I've some questions here. If you had to give one piece of advice to an advisor who's about to give notice, what would it be?
Know what you're getting into, right? And that
Mm.
kind of goes back to the beginning of our conversation about knowing what's in your contract, knowing what's in your compliance manual and employee handbook, because that's going to help shape the strategy for leaving. So to your point or earlier, Carm, about, whether or not you give a heads up to your supervisor, right? Whether or not you post something on LinkedIn that you're leaving or how you're letting your clients know, all of that comes down to what are the documents that govern your position with that firm, and knowing and understanding and then having a strategy for that. Because that's where we also see firms sending cease and desists, writing up on your U5 that you were terminated for cause or that you were under investigation when you left, right? Trying to make it difficult for you potentially to get hired elsewhere, or to kind of have issues if you're trying to register your own firm. So I think it's know where you stand and develop a strategy.
Great, great, great. All great stuff. See, I learned something new. Sure, a lot of people listening really appreciate this information, because the legal part is probably that. I tell you that the two things that people I hear the most is legal and will my clients come. Those are the two most common threads
Yeah.
around around, hey, these are the things that I'm holding, that are holding me up. And this was really great on the legal side. Um, you can find Leila everywhere. I think she's got a website for a website. I think she's on LinkedIn. You can email her. Give the email address out, that cool email address you told me about.
Yeah, it's you can email let's do this at myralawyer.com if you're interested in setting up a consultation. You can also visit our website, and you can schedule a meeting or send in a form to get tell us a little bit more about what you're looking for and get a consultation scheduled as well.
Leila and her team is great. They were fantastic with me. I felt really safe, even though I was in the middle of a little bit of a war, but I was treated great. And I'm sorry, Leila. I'm going to apologize for all the late night calls and fury during that 16 months. I'm sure I apologized before in the past. I'll do it again. If you want to connect with me about how, if you want to discuss Cornerstone Planning Group as an RIA and have a confidential conversation, please reach out. We'll set up an intro call. Very simple. And Leila, thank you so much again for your time. So valuable. Hopefully people are coming off this webinar, they see a clip and they're like, you know what? I got a little more confidence. I'm going to start making the move to go independent. And please reach out to Leila if you have any questions, and I will see you all soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys.